Hello everybody, SteelerDude11 here, and I am back with another video. Today I am going to be doing my bowl predictions for the 2019-20 college football season. So I'll go through each and every bowl game there is and make my predictions on who I think is going to win. So I have the bowl schedule up on my computer right now, so let's get right into it. So the first one will be the Makers Wanted Bahamas Bowl. It will be the Buffalo Bulls versus the Charlotte 49ers on Friday, December 20th at 2 o'clock p.m. on ESPN. So I think that this is going to be a win for Buffalo. Buffalo has played a lot better football this year than they had last year. Actually, no. Correction. Buffalo was actually very good last year, and then they ended up being a bit worse this year. And then Charlotte has shown improvement than what they actually have been, because Charlotte has only been in the FBS for only a few years, and this is the first year in the FBS where they're going to be in a bowl game. But I still think that Buffalo is going to win. Next one will be the Tropical Smoothie Cafe Frisco Bowl. It will be the Utah State Aggies against the Kent State Golden Flashes on December 20th. So the first time I think I've ever seen Kent State in a bowl game, because usually Kent State is like very, very bad. They usually only win like 2 or 3 games a year. This year they've won 6. And so they're going to be going bowling, and they're going to be playing Utah State. I think Utah State is going to win, because Utah State, in my opinion, is the better team here. They have a lot better players. Utah State has been good the past couple years. They still have that Jordan Love guy. So I think Utah State is going to win this game. So next up is the Air Force Reserve Celebration Bowl. This is an FCS game. It'll be Alcorn State versus North Carolina A&T on December 21st. Now, I know I might seem uncultured here, but I actually haven't been really paying attention to the FCS that much this year, so I have honestly no clue who could really win this game. I'm going to make a prediction. I'm just going to say it's going to be North Carolina A&T. All right, so next up is the New Mexico Bowl, which will be the Central Michigan Chippewas versus the San Diego State Aztecs on Saturday, December 21st. Central Michigan's a team that a lot of people were predicting were going to win the MAC, but then it ended up being Miami, Ohio. I mean, not the beginning, I mean in that game. And then I think that San Diego State is going to win here, because San Diego State is considered to be one of the better group of 5 teams. Like, you have a lot of good, like, there's quite a few good, really good players coming from that school. Like, Rashad Penny at the Seahawks was at San Diego State. And I think it's going to be a victory for San Diego State. That doesn't mean Central Michigan is a very bad team. Central Michigan has shown significant improvement. They went from going 1-11 last season to becoming 8-5 this year. So but it's still gonna be a victory for San Diego State. And up next will be the FBC Mortgage Cure Bowl, which will be the Liberty Flames versus the Georgia Southern Eagles on December 21st. This is going to be one for Liberty. Georgia Southern is not as good as they usually are, which, of course, Georgia Southern still and so far is the only team that has beaten Appalachian State this year, which was a shock. Appalachian State could have easily went undefeated this year, but nonetheless, Georgia Southern still won, but still, I think Liberty's going to win. I know Liberty suffered an embarrassing loss against Rutgers earlier in the season, but I still think Liberty's going to win. I think they're the better team here. Okay, so up next is the Cherry Bundy Boca Raton Bowl, and that will be the SMU Mustangs against the Florida Atlantic Owls on December 21st. So Florida Atlantic won the Conference USA this year. They won against UAB. It was a blowout, actually. I'm going to go Florida Atlantic here. And funny enough, even though this is a bowl game, this is actually surprisingly a home game for Florida Atlantic because the Boca Raton Bowl takes place at Florida Atlantic Stadium. So Florida Atlantic is playing, so it's a home game for them, which is pretty funny. And I still think both these teams are really good. SMU, usually not considered a good team, but they ended up going 10-2 this year. But I still think Florida Atlantic is going to win. So up next is the Camellia Bowl, which will be the Florida International Panthers versus the Arkansas State Red Wolves on December 21st. Now, Arkansas State had a bit of a down year. Of course, maybe some of it was Arkansas State's head coach, Blake Anderson. His wife ended up dying of cancer back in October or September. I think it was September. And then but they ended up going 7-5 this year. Usually, Arkansas State is one of the better teams of the Sun Belt, and then Florida International, usually better. Like they went 8-4 last year. With this year, they went 6-6. But Florida International still beat Miami, which was a shocker. For this game, I'm gonna go with Florida International because I think that Florida International is the better team here. Florida National did beat a Power 5 school this year, and Arkansas State did not. And when they did play Power 5 school, they got blown out because they lost like 55 or 56-0 against Georgia, and then Florida National beat Miami like 12-10 or something like that. So that's gonna be a win for Florida International. Next up is the Mitsubishi Motors Las Vegas Bowl, which will be the Mountain West champions Boise State Broncos against the Washington Huskies. I am picking the upset here. It might not be an upset, but I'm considering it one. I'm gonna say Boise State is gonna win. Washington is usually known as a good Pac-12 school, but they went 7-5 this year. They did not do as good as a lot of people thought they were gonna be. I think Washington and Oregon were the huge favorites to win the Pac-12 this year. But then Oregon ended up beating Utah in the championship game. And Boise State, is ranked. They've only lost one game this year, and I can't for the life of me remember who they lost to. If you remember, or I'm pretty sure you already know who Boise State lost to, and leave it in the comments section below. I'm pretty sure it was a Mountain West team. Hold on, I'm gonna put the camera down for a second. I'm gonna check and see who Boise State lost this year. If I can just type it in, Jesus. Okay, so here's their schedule. It was around the beginning of the year. It was BYU. They lost it wasn't a Mountain West team, but Boise State, their only loss this year was against BYU. So, but nonetheless, Boise State's going to get the win here, and they're going to be Las Vegas Bowl champions. And they're number 19, by the way. Forgot to mention that. All right, up next is the R+L Carriers New Orleans Bowl, which will be the 20th ranked Appalachian State Mountaineers versus the UAB Blazers. So the Appalachian State were the Sun Belt champions, and UAB were the Conference USA runner-ups. They ended up getting blown out in that game. This is on December 21st, just like the Las Vegas Bowl. Appalachian State's going to win. Appalachian State is a much better team than UAB. Like I mentioned previously, Appalachian State could have easily went undefeated this year, but of course, their only loss was against Georgia Southern, which was a big shock to a lot of people. But Appalachian State's going to get a win here. It might even be a blowout. Up next is the Bad Boy Mowers Gasparilla Bowl, which will be the Central Florida Knights against the Marshall Thundering Herd on December 23rd. Now, Central Florida has shown some, even though they finished 9-3, they show some decrease because in 2017 and 2018, Central Florida finished regular season undefeated. From the beginning of the 2017 season until the last game of the 2018 season, the conference championship, Central Florida won every game, and they even won in their bowl game against Auburn in 2017 season, and then they suffered their first loss in a very long time against LSU last year, and then this year against Pittsburgh, they suffered their first regular season loss since 2016. Then against Cincinnati, they lost their first conference loss since 2016. And then they ended up losing to Tulsa, too, which Tulsa's a bad team. I still think Central Florida is going to win here. Marshall has usually been known to be kind of bad, but they actually made a bowl game this year. But still, I think Central Florida is going to win. Up next is the SoFi Hawaii Bowl, which will be the Hawaii Rainbow Warriors against the BYU Cougars on Christmas Eve. Hawaii are the Mountain West runner-ups. They lost to Boise State in the Mountain West Championship, and BYU is an independent. I think Hawaii's going to win because I guess you consider, I don't think this is a home game because I think it's going to be at the stadium that the Pro Bowl used to be in before they moved to Florida. And then I think Hawaii's going to win. It's going to be a win for Hawaii, yes. Up next is the Walk-Ons Independence Bowl, which will be the Louisiana Tech Bulldogs versus the Miami Hurricanes on December 26th. Calling the upset here, Louisiana Tech is going to win. Miami already lost against the Conference USA team, which was Florida International, and it probably won't surprise me if they lose to another one. And Miami, they've just been showing some significant downfall. Like in 2017, they only lost one regular season game, and then the past couple of years, they've been losing a lot of games. So I don't know what happened to Miami. They used to be considered one of the best college football teams, but not anymore. Louisiana Tech is going to win. Up next is the Quick Lane Bowl, and that will be the Pittsburgh Panthers against the Eastern Michigan Eagles on December 26th. Pittsburgh is going to win because Pittsburgh's not as good as they were last year, but I still think that they're going to win. Up next is the Military Bowl, which will be the North Carolina Tar Heels against the Temple Owls on December 27th. North Carolina is going to win. I actually am glad North Carolina made a bowl game finally because the past 3 years they've been really bad and haven't made a single bowl game. Actually, I think I lied. Trubisky's last season at North Carolina before he got drafted to the Bears, they went to a bowl game, but after that they've just been absolutely terrible. I think last year they only won 3 games. Up next is the New Era Pinstripe Bowl, which will be the Michigan State Spartans against the Wake Forest Demon Deacons on December 27th. Wake Forest is going to win. Michigan State is just a bad team. Their offense is god-awful. Their defense can't stop any of the good teams. And Wake Forest has shown some significant increase because Wake Forest is usually known as one of the worst ACC teams, but they ended up going 8-4 this year. And I think Wake Forest is going to win, actually. You just wait and see. Up next is the Academy Sports and Outdoors Texas Bowl, which will be the 25th ranked Oklahoma State Cowboys versus the Texas A&M Aggies on December 27th. I think Oklahoma State is going to win. Texas A&M is extremely overrated this year. They're expected to be very good this year. They even finished in the top 25, but they ended up going 7-5. Oklahoma State, on the other hand, is actually ranked. So I think Oklahoma State is going to win. Up next is the San Diego Credit Union Holiday Bowl, which will be the 22nd ranked USC Trojans versus the 16th ranked Iowa Hawkeyes on December 27th. I am going to give Iowa the win here. I think Iowa is a better team than USC. Of course, Iowa finished with a better record, and yeah, so of course USC did lose to BYU in that one game. And then USC showed an improvement. Of course, they did fire their head coach, too. Clay Helton. Or whatever his last name is. Pretty sure it's Clay Helton. USC just fired Clay Helton. So I don't know who their interim coach is going to be until they hire someone for next season. But anyway, Iowa's going to win. Up next is the Cheez-It Bowl, which will be the Air Force Falcons against the Washington State Cougars on December 27th. Now, both these teams have been different from last season. Air Force is usually known to be bad, and they went 10-2 this year. Washington State has been pretty good the past couple of years, especially last year when they had Gardner Minshew, but they went 6-6 this year. And of course, Washington State still had that one game earlier in the year where their quarterback threw 9 touchdowns in that one game and they still lost. I'm going to say Air Force is going to win. I think Air Force is the better team here, even though they're a Mountain West team and Washington State is a Pac-12 team. I just think it's what's going to happen. Up next is the Camping World Bowl, which will be the 15th ranked Notre Dame Fighting Irish against the Iowa State Cyclones. Now, Notre Dame has been a little bit worse because Notre Dame went to the playoffs last year because they went undefeated. This year they didn't. They lost 2 games, which was Georgia and Michigan. Iowa State went 7-5. Notre Dame is going to win here, but I'm pretty sure what's going to happen, because this is what Notre Dame has been doing against all the easy teams they played. They'll struggle early, barely, have a little lead at halftime, but then once the second half comes, they'll just completely go away with it and win by a lot. I'm calling it right now. That's what's going to happen. So up next is the Goodyear Cotton Bowl Classic. This is a New Year's Six Bowl, and this will be the Memphis Tigers against the 17th ranked Memphis Tigers against the 10th ranked Penn State Nittany Lions, December 28th. Memphis won the American Athletic Conference. They only lost 1 game, which was to Temple. This is Memphis's first time ever being in a New Year's Six Bowl. But I still think Penn State is going to win. I think Penn State is a better team because, Penn State is known as a really big powerhouse. And Memphis has only been good for the past couple of years. And the Memphis coach is going to coach Florida, and he's going to be at Florida State next year because Florida State fired Willie Taggart earlier this season. Up next is a college football playoff semifinal, the ChickfilA Peach Bowl, which will be the 4th-ranked Oklahoma Sooners versus the 1st-ranked LSU Tigers on December 28th. Easy win for LSU here. Easy win. I'm pretty sure LSU is going to win this game. Of course, the Big 12 is still the only Power 5 conference to not win a college football playoff game, and I still think it's going to stand. Of course, Oklahoma is still the only Big 12 team to make it to the playoffs, and LSU was the first SEC team to go in the playoffs. They joined Alabama and Georgia in that. It's going to be a win for LSU. Up next is the other semifinal game, which will be the 3rd-ranked Clemson Tigers against the 2nd-ranked Ohio State Buckeyes. Oh, I forgot to mention, Oklahoma won the Big 12, LSU won the SEC, Clemson won the ACC, and Ohio State won the Big 10. This one's tough, but this is going to be a very interesting game. Both teams are going to have something to prove. Clemson is going to be irritated. Clemson's irritated because, a lot of people have been saying that Clemson is not as good as they were last year, This all started after they almost lost to North Carolina. And then Trevor Lawrence was struggling, but then right after that, they got right back in and finished 13-0. And Ohio State is irritated because they thought they were going to be number 1 because they beat 3 top 15 teams 3 weeks in a row. And they were number 1 when they played Wisconsin in the Big Ten championship game. But in the final playoff rankings, they decided to give LSU the number 1 spot. I'm going to say Ohio State is going to win. So the national championship is going to be LSU versus Ohio State. And we'll get into that later. Up next is the Serve Pro First Responder Bowl, which will be the Western Kentucky Hilltoppers versus the Western Michigan Broncos. So the battle of the Westerns here. Western Kentucky is going to win. Western Kentucky has shown some significant improvement. They sucked last year. I thought they were going to start off terrible this year. I thought they were going to be terrible this year because they started off with that loss to Central Arkansas, but then they got right back in it. They blew out a Power 5 team. Of course, it was Arkansas, but still. So, Western Kentucky is going to win. That game is on December 30th. Up next is the Franklin American Mortgage Music City Bowl, which will be the Mississippi State Bulldogs versus the Louisville Cardinals. That will be on December 30th. Louisville showing some significant improvement. They went 10-2. I'm sorry, 2-10. Defeated and did not beat a single ACC opponent last year, and they finished 7-5 this year. Gave Wake Forest their first loss this year, 6 games in. I'm gonna give Louisville the win here. Mississippi State, usually a pretty good SEC team, but not this year. I mean, they were decent. They went 6-6. I mean, of course, if you made it to a bowl game, you're at least decent. Up next, I'm sorry, Louisville's gonna win. Up next is the Red Box Bowl, which will be the California Golden Bears versus the Illinois Fighting Illini on Monday, December 30th. This was a big shock. Nobody thought. Everybody was expecting that Illinois was gonna finish as the worst Big Ten West team, but surprisingly enough, it was Northwestern. Illinois is going bowling. They finished 6-6, and they're playing Cal, and I think Illinois is going to win. Illinois' biggest win of the season was against Wisconsin, which nobody saw coming, and then that basically ruined Wisconsin's their college football playoff hopes, and then they lost to Ohio State twice. They almost beat them in the Big Ten Championship, had a 21-7 lead, but they blew it. Anyway, Illinois is going to win. Up next is the Capital One Orange Bowl, which will be the 9th-ranked Florida Gators versus the 24th-ranked Virginia Cavaliers. This is a New Year's Six Bowl, and this is Virginia's first appearance in a New Year's Six Bowl. But Florida is going to win here. Every time Virginia has played a good team this year, they lost, of course. In the ACC Championship, they got blown out by Clemson 62-17. So Florida's going to win. And that's on December 30th. Up next is the Belka Bowl, which will be the Virginia Tech Hokies versus the Kentucky Wildcats on New Year's Eve. Virginia Tech's going to win. Kentucky is not as good as they were last year. Virginia Tech is a lot better than they were last year. They finished 8-4 last year. I think they went Virginia Tech did make a bowl game last year. They barely did. Or maybe they didn't. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm just stupid. I don't know. Virginia Tech's going to win. Up next is the Tony the Tiger Sun Bowl, which will be the Florida State Seminoles versus the Arizona State Sun Devils. This will be on New Year's Eve. I'm going to pick Arizona State here. Arizona State, of course, had that big win against Oregon that Saturday before the last Saturday of the season, which ruined Oregon's playoff hopes. So Arizona State's going to win. Up next is the AutoZone Liberty Bowl, which will be the 23rd-ranked Navy Midshipmen versus the Kansas State Wildcats on New Year's Eve. I'm going to pick Kansas State. Even though Kansas State isn't ranked, Navy is. I still think Kansas State is a better team. They had that huge upset victory against Oklahoma, but that didn't matter to Oklahoma because they still got in the playoffs anyway, and they won their conference. If Baylor would have won the Big 12, then they probably would be in the playoffs and not Oklahoma. But whatever, it is what it is. Anyway, Kansas State is going to win. Up next is the Nova Home Loans Arizona Bowl, which will be the Georgia State Panthers versus the Wyoming Cowboys on New Year's Eve. I think this is going to be a win for Wyoming. I'm also going to support Wyoming because this isn't a biased opinion. I honestly think Wyoming is going to win. But the reason why I like Wyoming a bit was because I did 2 seasons as Wyoming in NCAA 14 Dynasty mode, and I did really good in that, and it was a lot of fun. But I think this is an unbiased opinion. Wyoming's going to win. My brother's coming down the stairs, by the way, if he comes in. Up next is the Valero Alamo Bowl, which will be the 11th-ranked Utah Utes versus the Texas Longhorns. Utah is the Pac-12 runner-ups. That championship game loss ruined their what?
I got Logan with it. That's what she said.
Okay.
Joke today.
Nathan, can't you see I'm recording a video right now?
I'm sorry. I thought you were talking to Ethan or something.
Anyway, it'll be the 11th ranked Utah Utes against the Texas Longhorns. This is an easy win for Utah. Oregon ruined Utah's playoff hopes in the Pac-12 championship, but I still think Utah's gonna win. Up next is the Outback Bowl, which will be the 18th ranked Minnesota Golden Gophers versus the 12th ranked Auburn Tigers on New Year's Day. This is gonna be a win for Auburn. Minnesota looked like they could potentially go to the Big Ten championship and perhaps a New Year's Six Bowl, but they didn't. They lost to Wisconsin and didn't play in the Big Ten championship. Wisconsin ended up doing it anyway. Up next is the VRBO Citrus Bowl, which will be the 14th ranked Michigan Wolverines versus the 13th ranked Alabama Crimson Tide. This will be on New Year's Day. Now, I know you guys already know I'm a Michigan fan, and I'm not saying this because I'm a fan of Michigan. This is my actual opinion, my actual thoughts. I actually think Michigan's gonna win. I knew they weren't gonna beat Ohio State, even though I joked around with everyone saying there's been a couple games this year I said Michigan wasn't gonna win. I think Penn State and Ohio State were the only game that said they weren't gonna win. I'm sorry, my brother's talking in the background. He just got back down. He's playing Fortnite with a friend. Up next is the Rose Bowl, which will be the 6th ranked Oregon Ducks versus the 8th ranked Wisconsin Badgers on Wednesday, January 1st. This is going to be a win for Oregon. I think Oregon is a much better team. I think they're still going to be irritated that they, got screwed out of the playoffs by Arizona State, and I'm pretty sure they're like, you know what, if we can't win the playoffs, we'll just win the Rose Bowl. Up next is the All-State Sugar Bowl. Oh, that's a New Year's Six Bowl, by the way. Oregon's Pac-12 champions. Wisconsin are the Big Ten runner-ups. Up next is the All-State Sugar Bowl, which is the final New Year's Six Bowl on New Year's Day. It'll be the 5th-ranked SEC runner-ups, Georgia Bulldogs, versus the 7th-ranked Big 12 runner-ups, the Baylor Bears. This is going to be a win for Georgia. I know that Georgia seems to be an overrated team. I mean, I knew they were overrated. I knew they were going to get blown out in the SEC championship game because Georgia is just not good against the good teams. And then, I'm sorry. I had a brain fart. Georgia's offense is terrible. Jake Fromm is a terrible quarterback, and they probably won't be good again until he leaves. Their defense is good, but Kirby Smart keeps wanting to blame their losses on the defense, even though it should be the offense and Jake Fromm especially. And then Baylor, every time Baylor has played a good team, the only really good team Baylor has played this year was Oklahoma, and they lost to them twice in regular season and in the Big 12 championship game. Of course, sorry my brother's being a retard right now. Anyway, Baylor had a 28-3 win lead against Oklahoma in regular season, but blew it. And they lost in overtime to Oklahoma in the Big 12 championship game. But Georgia's going to win. Up next is the Ticket Smarter Birmingham Bowl, which will be the Boston College Eagles against the 21st ranked Cincinnati Bearcats. This is going to be one for Cincinnati. I'm not going to explain stuff anymore. I'm just going to hurry up and get done with the video because this video is almost a half an hour long. Up next is the Tax Slayer Gator Bowl, which will be the Indiana Hoosiers against the Tennessee Volunteers. Easy win for Indiana. Up next is the famous Idaho Potato Bowl, which is the Ohio Bobcats versus Nevada Wolfpack. This is going to be a win for Nevada. Up next is the Lockheed Martin Armed Forces Bowl, which will be the Southern Miss Eagles versus the Tulane Green Wave. I think it's the Green Wave or the Mean Green. No, that's North Texas. They're the Green Wave. Win for Tulane. Then the Lending Tree Bowl, which will be the Sun Belt runner-ups, Louisiana Raging Cajuns versus the MAC champions, the Miami, Ohio Redhawks. A win. This is Louisiana's gonna win, and then finally the national championship, which according to my predictions will be the LSU Tigers versus the Ohio State Buckeyes. I think LSU is gonna win, and I think LSU is gonna be the 2020 national champions. So anyway, those are my bowl predictions. I'm sorry it took longer than I thought it was gonna be. If you agree with my predictions, then leave in the description. In the comment section down below what you think is gonna happen, especially like the New Year's Six Bowl. I'm pretty sure like some of you aren't gonna care about the mini bowl games, like with the group of 5 team versus another group of 5 team. Anyway, so that's my bold predictions for this season. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you're not already. And I will see you guys next time whenever I make another video, whenever that will be. And, alright. I will see you guys later. Peace.